Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we started off, what was it, the Space Pirates?
Space Pirates.
Space Pirates. What was that one about?
The Wheel and Space Pirates. They're all starting to blend together now. But fortunately, we just watched this one yesterday, even though they'll come up a week apart. The TARDIS lands on what appears to be some kind of long-haul freighter type thing, moving this stuff called argonite, which is obviously a very valuable mineral. But the pirates come in, and the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe have crawled into another cabin, and when it gets blown apart, they're isolated from the TARDIS. And then along comes this space prospector, which we thought was an interesting concept, just way overblown. Both his costume and his accent, the whole works there. Anyway, you've got the Space Corps trying to chase down the space pirates. We don't know exactly where this space prospector comes in. There were some bizarre, abrupt jumps. The Space Corps decides to go down and meet the leader of the mining company, a woman named Madeline. Interesting kind of metallic beehive hairdo. And we find out that supposedly the space prospector killed Madeline's father when they were back as mining partners. Anyway, the Doctor and his companions end up on the planet where the pirates are disassembling the pieces for the argonite, and when they get spotted, they jump into a hole and they disappear. We don't know where. That was literally the cliffhanger that we left on.
Yes.
Is that about right?
That's pretty much, that's probably the best recap you've ever given.
That's because it was only yesterday.
Yeah. And because it was only yesterday, you can probably hear it in our voices. I hear it in our voices that our voices don't want to be doing this right now.
But we're good.
Yeah.
We're doing this because we're going on vacation. We're going to take about 8 or 10 days.
Yeah. So
head up into the mountains.
And that's the thing. I normally don't do like 2 days in a row of recording. I am actually technically scheduled to record even more tomorrow. Perhaps I will swap that around with an editing day. But yes, we're on the last 3 parts of the Space Pirates, and this is the last of the recons.
And we noticed something really odd. In some of the recon shots, the pictures had been flipped. Because when you look at it, for example, what's his name? General Hermack or something like that?
Something, yeah.
His insignia is on one side, and then it appears on the other side.
Yeah.
And then, Space Corps insignia, the letters are reversed. And sometimes Madeline's hair is parted on the right side, and sometimes it's parted on the left side.
Yeah.
And I think whoever put it together, is that the loose cannon people?
Yeah.
They were doing that simply to not show us the same stuff over and over again. But it's kind of jarring when you look at it and go, why is that reversed? There's no reason to reverse that.
Yeah, well, and it's a weird thing because I think they wanted to like, I guess, keep continuity with the story where it's like, okay, when it's this shot, he's on the left side of the screen and she's on the right side of the screen. But they didn't have a shot from the only complete episode where he was on the right and she was on the left. So they just had to reverse the shot and hope nobody noticed. Problem is, we noticed.
We noticed.
And you can't even say, like, oh, well, 50 years ago they wouldn't care. Because this is loose cannon. They made this, I don't know, like, what year this was made specifically, but within the past 2 decades, at least, this was made. So it's something people would have noticed. This is something that is pretty much only viewable in this form on the internet. And internet people will notice. They are that picky about things. So... And we should know, we are internet people, so...
Now, all that being said, I think we came to an agreement that we thought it was an interesting script, but it was... Our main complaint was with the directing and with the overdone characterization of the prospector.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's interesting. Again, don't know if anything in the late 60s... would have been a direct influence on this because, pirates stealing stuff really had died out a long, long time ago. And it's only recently come back there on the Horn of Africa where, a lot of the very poor Africans living on the east coast of Africa have been hijacking ships like the Maersk Alabama with Captain Phillips and things like that. So, again, don't know if this has anything to do with that. So it doesn't seem to have an inspiration from history that I recall.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess it's basically just that. So we have 3 episodes to go through, it's a recon, so it's not going to be the most engaging reaction we ever do. And we're also now extra tired because we already did this yesterday. And I've been recording even more since then. So with that enthusiastic intro out of the way, let's go ahead and finish off the Space Pirates. Here we go.
Doctor puts his hand in his pocket, pulls out some drawing pins. Oh, push pins. Thumbtacks.
I like drawing pins.
Sure. Kevin is staring down the mine shaft.
I guess he just landed on those.
Jamie is rubbing his ankle. Suddenly a low moan emanates from the dark corner of the room. It's a Horta. Devil in the dark. Fascinated by this idea of a flat spaceship.
Well,
Even the rocket exploded at the Gabriel on the flight path.
There's nothing. It's completely disappeared. The scanner
Also,
shows zero.
British pronunciation, debris was repronounced debris.
well,
I have no cracks in the wall. Yes, you see the way they run. There are marks like
Doctor produces a stethoscope from his pocket, listens to the wall.
well, the man's duly prepared.
He rummages through his pockets until he finds the tuning fork.
Yes.
You know, I feel like that's a prime use for the sonic screwdriver.
One contact.
Just make a sound is all he needed.
Objects moving quite slowly.
XX to the V-Master. I seem to have lost contact. Can you steer me in, please?
Stand by.
This pilot kind of looks like Harrison Ford.
You doubled round.
Jamie snatches the tuning fork and hurls it at the wall. The tuning fork hits the wall and vibrates loudly, causing a hidden door to slide open. Doctor's group slowly edging along a tunnel. Sorb is being helped along by Jamie.
So I guess Clancy's not with the pirates then. It's always funny to see when they've just pasted a head onto a soldier's body.
Jamie looks at the gun and throws it down in disgust.
You could throw it at them.
Kevin waves his arm, indicating for his men to move forward.
I'm pretty sure some of these guards are CG, and it looks really weird.
Very wide shoulders.
Kevin
and the guards enter, and the guard is electrocuted by the doctor's trap. Yikes! He's killing people left and right.
Well,
The doctor and Jamie have caught up with the others.
Right, come on.
With the control panel destroyed, Kevin waves the guards on.
If what you say is
you ever seen the STONKS meme? It kind of looks like that. I'll put it on screen, so you'll see it in 3 weeks.
At that moment, Kevin enters, followed by 2 guards. Sorba grabs a weapon, but Kevin shoots him dead.
Anybody else want to die like a hero? You must have walked in here with your eyes wide open, Clancy. How very naive of you.
Alrighty. Let me look this up real quick. Well, I'm not looking up anything actually important, but yeah. It looks like that. Just in a suit. So, alright. Anyway, that was part 4.
Again, very interesting how, again, this is just a costume note. Madeline's headpiece, somewhat vaguely reminiscent of the Queen Nefertiti bust that was found sometime either early 20th century or mid 20th century. And yet it also conforms to that, again, beehive look of British girls and American girls in the late 50s and early 60s. So instead of making her hair look like that, they've made it into a helmet or some kind of, business headgear. But it's just interesting to look at that from 60 years on and go, I remember those hairstyles.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting because assuming that it is just a weird headpiece or helmet that she wears, you would almost think there would be sort of a border around the edge of it to make it a bit more look like it. I mean, the fact that it does, like, it almost has, tiny sideburns. It's got a specific part in it. It's like, is this supposed to be just futuristic hair? Or is it supposed to just be a headpiece? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a headpiece. Although, again, it does sit kind of high. It seems like, because it has the cutout and the sideburns and everything, it seems it should fit a little bit further down on her head. But
yeah,
I mean, it's not a distraction. It's just, I thought, interesting costume choice from the costume designer.
Yeah, it's like in Star Wars when Padme has all those weird different headdresses that she has. So, okay, so Clancy is not with the pirates.
So far, yeah, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah. It seems like Clancy is against Kevin, at least.
And it appears, since Madeline told Clancy not to call Hermack, that maybe she's in with the pirates?
It could be. Well, because I was kind of thinking, like, if they're just down there, you not have cameras. I mean, I guess they're just... Maybe it could be like, well, it's just an abandoned mine shaft. Why would we have any, like, surveillance there? But... I don't know, in case of this, I guess, like, yeah, so it could be that she's actually in on it. It's entirely possible. Because why would they specifically... There's no reason to stop him from calling. I mean, I guess there's the chance that if, like, that could divert the general guy away from there just because he would go after Clancy, but yeah. I don't know. So she could be in on it, could not be.
Let's find out.
Yeah. And then, if she's in on it, then she frames Clancy for the death of her father. Maybe that could be something like that. Or I'm just thinking too much of Prison Break.
Now, some of the, fiddling with the tuning fork and everything, that seemed like padding. But it seems like padding because we're watching it in the recons. I think if we'd seen the action, it would have looked like it was just, that's the amount of time it took him.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else want to die like a hero?
I guess the guards have a few more facial features than STONKS guy, but still.
I never agreed to anything like this.
If you don't like it, step outside for a
I
moment.
don't want any more killing.
Too bad.
Oh, well, there you
I
go.
warn you, Captain.
But that doesn't mean to say you're not guilty.
Maybe, but I never agreed to murder.
Well, you better agree to it, because if we don't get rid of these snoops, we'll both end up in a nervous chair.
Man, we never get an answer that fast. That was crazy.
Back to the space opera.
I forgot about that. It's interesting, because on the wing here, I'm pretty sure it's the 4 and the 1 that drop down. But this ship is not big enough to hold another ship.
When the guard is unlocking a heavy steel door, he swings it open and gestures them to enter. With a kick, the guard forces them into the darkness, then locks the door behind them.
Man, he kicked 4 people at once. That's incredible.
Yeah. This is the old fellow's private study. Thanks.
Well, you've got plenty to read.
I've been in here.
So he points to a bare foot sticking out from under the table. Doctor whips the cover off the table to reveal an unkempt face. The man scuttles out, mouthing incoherent threats.
I will not let you do it.
I don't think you've got much choice.
Are you threatening me?
Master
You may be the head
Jedi.
of the secret.
What are they doing in there? That is my father's study. I gave orders for that door to be kept locked.
Chief said to put him in there.
Captain?
Madeline lashes out at Kevin, thumping his chest in a burst of anger and upset.
Let's talk about how you're going to help me, shall we? Because that's much more important.
You know, in fiction, no one ever goes for the eyes. Like, it's a good place to hit. If they're not wearing glasses like we are.
The guards charge in and slip on the wax and marbles. Zoe breaks a vase over one guard's head, and they escape into the corridor.
It's a good thing they were wearing helmets.
The doctor backs away from the blast of the rocket. He begins to choke as the fumes overwhelm him, and eventually he falls lifeless. Now, a minor point has nothing to do with anything. I just realized that the secondary pirate is named Dervish. If I recall correctly, during the Ottoman Empire, there were a group of religious fanatics called the whirling dervishes who used to literally dance around and around in a circle and put themselves into a trance that supposedly, connected them with the higher powers that be or whatever, and they literally would dance until they blacked out or went mad. So it's kind of an odd choice. That would have been a well-known fact to, I mean, even upper level school children about the dervishes. So makes me wonder. There's no connection there that I can see, but
Yeah.
it's an odd choice for a name.
Oh, yeah. So when they put Dom into his own study and locked it, he did that because, well, she wants it locked, so she'll never go in there. Because for some reason she'll never get sentimental and go read one of his 10,000 books or something. I mean, the man's got a whole library. It's a kind of a nice place, honestly.
Yeah.
So, I get it. It seems a bit risky, though, when you're trying to, keep your leverage and hide away the fact that he's still alive until the right moment. You're really banking on the fact that she will never go to that room.
And that he will somehow stay alive, because let's face it, he looked like he was in pretty bad condition.
Yeah, did they just, toss in some food every 24 hours or so? I mean, maybe if they can just toss it because I guess he did sort of say that maybe they were also kind of torturing him or something. Yeah. So it could be possible that they were still going to him. But, yeah, it's not the most foolproof prison, so...
Now, it's interesting they used a human voice there, because the theremin, which you may have seen on Big Bang Theory and even on the early Star Trek, that would have produced that same kind of weird sounding.
He wouldn't do it. Oh, come on.
I'm very curious why Dave fell behind.
Jamie and Zoe carry the doctor away from the fumes.
We should have for this entire season been writing down all the ways the doctor gets injured before his regeneration.
But he collapses. Take off your hair and smack him with it. Dervish raises his gun, but Jamie knocks it, causing the blast to hit the control unit. Oh, how coincidental. Jamie then knocks Dervish out with a punch.
Oh, good job, Jamie. Last second fight in the recons that we still miss.
Five-second clip.
Must have been something from episode 2.
Come up from the inside.
Why do their heads look too large for those bodies?
Well,
The equivalent of about 80 old-fashioned hydrogen bombs.
You'd never do that. You blow yourself sky high as well.
Oh no. We shall explode it when we're a safe distance away. The V-ship is right in the flash zone. You have about 40 minutes.
Can you say 30 hydrogen bombs?
Yeah.
Seems a little overkill.
He connects a series of wires together and then leaves.
Why did we get that shot?
Just noticing this ship slightly resembles a Klingon bird of prey. Carefully traces the route of the cables, checks the radiation level on a Geiger counter. Then he moves over to the radio box and examines its cables and aerial. Misspelled aerial. Should be IAL.
It's a good thing he knows how to disarm something like that.
There goes Kevin and Dervish.
Yep.
Have to go back to home planet. To stand trial.
Was it a very trial?
Were there other peoples on this station, by the way? I don't remember.
But Milo's very kindly offered to give us a lift in the Liz. Oh, no, not the Liz again. Frankly, I'd rather walk. Oh, you never know, you might have to.
Okay. And that's the last of the recons.
Amen and amen.
Finally.
Now, I will say these last 3 episodes, in my opinion, are not as good as the first 3. I still think it's a good story. Again, it more has to do with the direction. Again, there's some silliness in these last 3 episodes that I understand they're trying to break up, but it's a good story. You got space pirates. You got a guy who's falsely being blamed for it. It turns out that the people we thought were the good guys, Madeline and her people, were actually the bad guys, and ultimately she takes responsibility for that right there at the end. But again, it's just there's an element of trying to make it humorous rather than letting it be humorous. And other than that, though, I enjoyed it. Again, a good story. Could have used some judicious directing. Again, I lay it mostly on the director, but the writing of the last 3 episodes wasn't up to the first 3. I didn't think.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Well, it kind of makes me think, like, I wonder if they could have tightened this a bit, even just, like, in the script. And I think that could just be me, because we're watching it in recons, that I'm thinking, oh, well, if this was like maybe 1 or 2 episodes less, but there's not really anything you can cut out from this.
Yeah.
Maybe if you really tried, you could get this down to 5 episodes, but even then, you don't really need to. Yeah. I think that is just the recons, but I think like part of that is it's the recons and the direction with some of the acting and stuff that makes me think like, well, is there something? But I'm immediately defaulting to the script, but that's not where the problem really lies. So,
and again, I've said this before. I realize they're writing these scripts very, very hurriedly, and sometimes editing as they're filming. But having been a journalist, having worked on newspapers for combined almost 5 years, I go out in the morning and I get the facts for the story, I get the interviews and pictures and things like that, and I've got a deadline of 1 o'clock, so I have to make it as good as possible. And I understand that, sometimes they're going, what do I do now? I've kind of written myself into a corner. But these are professional writers. These are people who are getting paid for it. So it seems to me they should be able to craft a better narrative overall in the time that they have. And again, first 3 episodes I thought were pretty good. The second 3 not quite as good. But again, that comes down more to the direction and the acting rather than the script.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand why the director chose to again try to make parts humorous instead of just letting it be humorous.
Yeah.
It's always it's less funny when you try to make it funny.
Yeah. I almost wonder too if maybe they just had to commit, like they start off episode 1 and it's like, all right, here's Milo, and he's, really goofy, and, he's got that strange prospector, aw shucks thing going on. And after the first episode, they were like, well, if we tone this back, it's not going to be the same character. And we could do that, or we could just keep it consistent. Or, I get the feeling they didn't really have, like, studio notes or anything, like because that's sort of the other thing I would think is the other reason that you would go sort of that goofy is if there was a studio note like, hey, let's make this guy funnier for the kids or something. But I don't think that was ever really a thing with Doctor Who.
But again, having been an actor, having been a writer, not just for newspapers, but also a playwright and a director, I look at that and say there are ways that Milo could have been funny without trying to be funny. He could have still lightened up the script, but he still could have played it a lot more seriously.
Yeah.
And again, part of the problem I had to him was, again, that accent was just so thick and didn't have to be. There was no reason for that.
Yeah, like if you want to go for the sort of strange space bumpkin that he is, like you can sort of go with that and it's like, oh, okay, maybe that could be kind of an interesting idea. It's like, all right, here's this guy, he's sort of down on his luck and he's just sort of, trying to make his way in the universe and stuff, and he's kind of like this strange space prospector kind of, and you could sort of lean into that. I mean when you really look at the Doctor, he's kind of a strange one too. It's like, all right, here's this, strange guy who doesn't really talk like anyone else, and he's wearing this strange getup with a bow tie and going around space with with his two companions, one who is legitimately like, no, she belongs in space, and then the other one, this strange Scottish boy that pals around with them too. And it's like, so you can do that, but then it might have been like, well, we have to make this guy different from the Doctor, so they just went too far in a different direction. Yeah.
But if you remember, I think it was it in Toy Story 2 where they actually had the Prospector?
Yeah.
And he wasn't that, there's, I mean, in the, he has to put on the, Prospector thing, but when he's not putting on the whole Prospector persona, that's what they could have done. They could have gone with this guy who says, look, I've been out here for years out in space. I'm just a guy trying to make a living, and you could do all sorts of, let him chew tobacco. There's all sorts of things you could have done that were more authentic than giving him that, completely ridiculous, overacting kind of thing that he does, and very hard to understand too. Now I realize that the quality of the audio on the recons is not that great.
Yeah.
But very hard to understand him at times.
Yeah. It's almost like, they wanted to go for some strange Western stereotype, honestly, but they leaned too far into the Foghorn Leghorn rather than the Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Yes.
It's
boy, I say, boy, I'm out here doing some prospecting.
Yeah.
Hear me there, boy.
Because that's the thing with the Prospector in Toy Story 2. Isn't it Kelsey Grammer that plays him, I think? Yeah. It's like, he's Kelsey Grammer playing this sort of, just sort of a older, cowboy Western guy, as opposed to that strange, over-stereotypical, goofy, weird character, Which also reminds me of the movie Knives Out, Daniel Craig's accent in that. It's like, where did that come from?
Well, he was playing a Southerner, and it was just overdone.
Yeah,
it's a great character, but just again could have pulled back.
Yeah,
on that.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like I feel like they brought in Daniel Craig, and they were like, okay, what's the most ridiculous accent you could do? And he did that, and they're like, all right, tone it down just slightly, and we'll go with that. So,
but again, that very Southern New Orleans sort of thing. Can be done, but if you overdo it, it's grating. It's unnecessary.
It doesn't help. Again, kind of like with Daniel Craig, being British. This guy is also British. Probably doesn't have that much exposure to any accent from the States, so he's just going a little too hard.
It's very interesting if you compare that to, there was an actor on NCIS New Orleans who had a very Southern Louisiana accent, and I mean, it never bothered me at all. He was on there for like 5-6 seasons, and that's the way they talk down there, And I don't think he was actually from Louisiana, but he had mastered that accent. And again, it's just, when you're going to have a character who is that involved in the plot, you can't have him be a distraction like that.
Yeah, definitely as sort of the. I mean, I don't want to say like the center of the plot, but yeah, you're right. He was a major character. I mean, we suspected he was the villain for quite some time. So
now, and remember, they did a very good job when they did what was it, the Gunfighters, where they ended up at the OK Corral.
Yeah,
I didn't think those were too overdone.
Yeah, there were like a couple of the background guys where it's like, okay, they got Jim off the street, and it's like do somewhat of a cowboy accent, and they did, and it's like, all right. Or you get like, I remember in Tomb of the Cybermen, there's a couple of those American guys that are just out there, and let's go do this, Jim, and it's like, okay, chill out, you British actor. But the major characters that were in the Gunfighters, they did pretty well, like Doc Holliday and everything. So yeah.
No.
There's even a couple American accents in this that were all right.
Let me say, in defense, I just directed Gaslight earlier this spring. All American actors who were trying to do British accents. And it drove me crazy that they were so inconsistent. I kept telling them, either say the word B-E-E-N as bin or as bean. But you can't use both. If your character has the accent where they say bin, that's one thing. but you cannot say both Bean and Ben, because people like me will be sitting there going, why are you saying the same word 2 different ways? How long have you been married? And where have you been living all that time? So, no. So anyway.
Yeah.
Just be consistent. Whatever you do, be consistent.
I guess Clancy was consistent. He was just consistently not good.
Just too much.
A little too much, so.
What else we got here?
Let's see. So we had the cave prison, which is where we started off, which was interesting. So they just have this... I mean, I guess we don't know how old, like, these tunnels and stuff are, but it's interesting that they specifically have, like, this brig made out of the cave and part of the rock wall that will open up to another door. It's a little, like, you start thinking about it and it sort of unwinds, but still, it works out.
Now, obviously, when they entered, crawling through the hole and then slipping down, that couldn't have been too far, or they would have been more seriously hurt.
Yeah.
So, once they're down in there, the guys who had chased them obviously went away. Why couldn't they just crawl back out the way they came in? It wasn't a vertical wall. I mean, it seems to me they could have climbed up and gone back out that way.
And the whole point is that it looks like just a sort of cave, a cave wall. You could probably climb your way back up there. Yeah. So,
minor point, though.
Yeah, the minor point, overthinking it. And then we did have the using sound to get out of there, which was clever. Again, I guess, the use of the sonic screwdriver really does just come down to Troughton lost it after that first time he used it, and they just never bothered to make another one and write it back in. Which is strangely lazy, I feel like. Or they just were like, whatever, let's just move on.
I'm getting more and more fascinated that he literally has, a TARDIS inside his coat. Because he has pulled out thumbtacks, what do they call them, drawing pins?
Something like that, yeah.
He had a tuning fork, he had a stethoscope.
Yes, marbles.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of fun. Just the infinite pocket there. And again, I'm surprised that they haven't used that more throughout Troughton's 3 years.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we watched Genesis of the Daleks and they emptied the Doctor's pockets, there was like a ton of weird stuff. Like he had a yo-yo and a bunch of weird sort of... He had like a telescope and a sonic screwdriver and everything.
Pull out an oar, canoe.
Yeah.
Okay, but again... A great bit, and here we are at the end of his tenure, and they're just now starting to use that.
Yeah, he definitely, like... They could have been doing that a lot more. Maybe they'll do that with the third Doctor. I don't see the third Doctor as the kind of guy that would have a bunch of weird stuff. Like that's the thing, like the first Doctor, I wouldn't really suspect that too much. Maybe he has like a couple things, but not too much. The second Doctor, he's a weirdo, so he would have stuff like that. And then Jamie would be like, "Oh, what do you got that for in your pockets?"
And he also doesn't usually have his little recorder, which we haven't seen in a while. I was kind of thinking there when they were in the cave that he might pull out the recorder and try to play some notes on it to open the door.
Yeah,
instead of the tuning fork.
I remember. I think the last time it was referenced. It was something like that, but he didn't have it because Jamie forced him to leave it on the TARDIS. So presumably Jamie has just forced him to abandon that thing forever. So yeah, but that would have been interesting. But yeah, it has been a while. That was probably season 5 when they last referenced it. Yeah. So let's see. Clancy was not with the pirates. So essentially he was just sort of, just this loner prospector and just trying to get the stuff anyway. He was just trying to get the Argonite for himself, and then because of that he was just the perfect target to be framed for all of this. So, and then I like that there's like double deception on top of it. It's like, so Madeline and Cavan, they frame him for all of this stuff, and then that means Cavan specifically framed him for the death of her father, but she didn't know that. So there's like double levels of like framing and deceiving.
No honor among thieves.
Yeah, so keep to the code. They fall behind.
They're more like guidelines.
Yeah, so... but yeah, so then when it's like, oh, well, Clancy's not involved with the pirates, and we're thinking, oh, well, maybe it's Madeline. Immediately, start of episode 5, yes, she's involved with that. But she didn't want to... it's one of those weird things in stories where it's like, oh, well, you're involved with these very clearly bad people, and it's like, yes, but I didn't think, they would end up murdering people. And it's like, okay, you gotta know who you threw your lot in with,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was too much. They were going too far, which I guess they hadn't murdered until Sorba, just there. So everything was working out. It's like, yeah, I'm working with criminals, but they're not the worst criminals. Like, well, you're really taking a chance on that one. So what exactly was she gaining from this? Like, she had the Argonite, but was it just to get the fortune? Was that it?
I guess. It didn't seem like if she had run a legitimate business, she could have gotten just as much money.
Yeah, so I guess it was just that. She just didn't think that it would ever get too serious, that people would end up dying and stuff. So
now this is completely off subject too, except for I mentioned because I'm sure they said it in one of the first 3 episodes, but the planet that she and her mining group were on was called Ta. I'm assuming that's just TA, which is odd because that's kind of a euphemism for thank you.
Wow.
When I was over, you went off and bought some fish and chips, and you gave some to your buddy. Oh, Ta. That literally short for thank you very much. So I was just a planet named Thank You.
Yeah. Well, it was either that or it was Tar, but just with their accents it sounded like that, or with the audio. So it was one of those two. Either way, it's a weird name. Yeah. So,
and notice they never called the home planet by a name other than we must go back to home planet.
Yeah, it was never like Earth or anything. It was just home planet.
Venusia.
Yeah.
Siluria.
Yeah.
Tatooine.
Yeah. So, and I guess the whole thing with Madeline being involved, I'm wondering if maybe she got involved with the pirates after the supposed death of her father. So then, once they frame Milo for it, then she gets involved, and she keeps framing him for all the other piracy and stuff. It could be something like that. Yeah. So,
and I got to thinking, the last name is Sigri. That begins to sound less Portuguese and probably more Italian. And then I got to thinking, well, Dom is also occasionally short for Dominic, which is an Italian name. So Dom and Sigri, but again, neither one of them looked or sounded like they were from Italian ancestry. So.
Yeah, so of course I wouldn't put it past this show to try to do an Italian accent, and it would not work out, so it'd just be weird and over the top too. So maybe that's for the best that they weren't Italian.
I've done an over the top Italian accent for a show called Lend Me a Tenor, but it's written that way. It's just the more stereotypical Italian English that you can get, the funnier it gets, because that's just the way the character is written.
I know on one of the anime that I'm reacting to, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, in the Japanese version, one of the characters will exclaim things in English, and I'm like, oh my god, and it's very much English when he does it in the Japanese version, so you kind of lose that in the English dub. And this is Joseph Joestar, who's played by Richard Epcar, and I've
friend
seen
of mine from college.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people say, while he can't do the English in the English dub, he ups the ham by like 10 times. So anyway, let's see. So then we had the study with her father again, really just sort of banking on the fact that she never goes down to that study just to be there to remember her father or read any of the books or anything.
And why does his study have basically a vault door on it?
Yeah, well, it's just sort of like it's just sort of in the rocks, like, which I guess, seeing their prison is also just sort of in the rocks. Like, this is sort of a weird facility. It's like rooms are just sort of there. Just go down the cavern and you'll find just a room. So, but yeah. Looked like a nice study, though.
Yeah.
So, and if you, well, there was no lights. You have to light candles and stuff, but it looked like a nice place at least. So
now, was it Jamie or Zoe who reacted first to the candles?
It was Jamie who said, it's like, there's just a bunch of candles, and Jamie said, oh, in this day and age, and it's like, are you in any place to judge? Like, that seemed like okay, yes, he's been traveling with the Doctor probably for years now, but it still seemed a little odd. That seems like something maybe Zoe would say.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure out who had said that, because Jamie would have been a guy who had used candles and oil lamps all of his life, and again, it would have been more in character for Zoe to say, candles, good heavens, people haven't used candles for thousands of years.
Yeah, so, honestly, probably Jamie might have felt more at home in that room, like, well, there's candles and, just a bunch of books and a clock, and that's that, Yeah. So, let's see. And then they did break out of the prison using the smoke and the marbles and candle wax that they were able to trip up the guards, and then, they hit their heads with a vase, but the guards are wearing a helmet. So that helmet doesn't actually help with anything, I guess.
Not really.
Yeah, so...
And which brings me back to when she picked up the vase, I thought back to that episode where, they had that close-up shot of the teapot, and then the teapot falls and breaks, and there was a close-up of the broken pot, and I thought they never did go back to that.
No.
Nope. So why was that in there?
I think that's just... We're reading too much into that, because in a normal... In the regular episode... It would have just shown teapot falls over, maybe like Jamie looks at it, you move on. But because it's a recon, it's like 15 seconds just on this teapot with text going across the screen. So it's like, oh, is this something important? No, that's just how it was framed in the recon. Okay. So I think that's just it.
Kind of like, though, in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when they break the big vase over one of the Nazis' head, and... Sean Connery says, "Oh, this is horrible. This is horrible." He's thinking he's broken, some hundreds of years old vase, and he realizes, oh no, it's just a cheap ripoff. It's a fake.
Yeah. So, that's a good movie.
It was.
I think that's my favorite of the Indiana Jones movies. So
my favorite line, though, you call this archaeology?
Yeah. So if I had to like rank them, it'd probably be 3, 1, space 2, more space 4. So,
yeah. I never cared for Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom is an acid trip. It's hilarious, but it's not... Like, the 1 and 3 are really good. 2 is just a weird ride that you just kind of enjoy, but it's not like the other two.
Yeah.
So, and then 4 is just kind of there.
4 is an abomination.
Nah. So...
It doesn't always have to be about aliens, Mr. Spielberg.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, there was the remote control on the Liz, which was kind of interesting. And it's also... So they never explained why Jamie and Zoe took so long to get over there. Just remember, because that was why the Doctor got out, because they weren't there yet. And it's like... And then they catch up, get him out of there because he's suffocating. And that's just that. It's like, well, why... Like, they kind of said, like, oh, well, maybe they're, checking to see if we were followed or anything, but they never say why.
Didn't Jamie go back and try to help Sorba before Sorba was killed?
But that was I think that was in episode 4, actually, when they escaped the prison. So, yeah. I don't think they ever say why they took so long to get back to the ship. So, oh well. I guess it's not a big deal. Yeah. Just something I noticed. So
we're just talking.
It's not a big deal. It's just something I noticed. Is honestly the tagline of these reactions. So, anyway, let's see. We had the hydrogen bombs, which I swear he said there was like 30 of them. Like,
I thought he said there were 80 of them.
Yes, there were a lot. There were at least over 10 at least.
Yes.
So. Probably too many. Like that's a lot of hydrogen bombs for like 4 people. So
yeah, the entire complex could have been destroyed with a single bomb.
Yeah. So, but the Doctor was able to defuse it. Luckily, he knows how to defuse hydrogen bombs. So, which I guess that does sort of make sense. We've seen him doing a lot more technical stuff recently.
That got me to thinking about the end of the James Bond film Goldfinger, where the bad guy has planted a nuclear device at Fort Knox, which is the depository of all the American gold in Kentucky. And this device is about to blow up, and Oddjob has been electrocuted, and Bond opens up the device, and he's got a couple of gold bullion things, and he's hammering away at it, knowing that at any moment this thing could blow up, and suddenly a hand appears beside him and just flips a switch. And the whole thing turns off, and he looks up and it's like, seriously? Just flick a switch? And then he looks down, and the digit counter counting down to 0 had stopped at 007. Which was a cool visual joke.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, you have got to see Goldfinger. In my opinion, the best James Bond film ever. Send your comments somewhere else.
Which Bond is that?
That's number 3. That's Sean Connery.
Okay.
I think Dr. No was first, then From Russia with Love, or those were switched, and then Goldfinger was the third one.
All right.
But yeah, the original Sean Connery, the real James Bond.
Ah. There's a hot take for you. Apparently, I mean, I suppose that's like you saying there's one Doctor, the first Doctor. So that also reminds me, they did that, if you remember, in an episode of Sherlock, where they're panicking about a bomb on the train that's being sent to Parliament, and then and Sherlock saying like, oh no, I can't figure it out, and then it just doesn't go off, and then John looks and there's just the switch, and Sherlock just turned it off. It's like, of course there's a switch. If there wasn't a switch, there'd be a lot more dead terrorists because they can't turn off their own bomb. So yeah. The last thing I wrote down is that Madeline will have to stand trial. However, she says that it won't be the worst thing. I mean, a lot of it is her sort of being caught up in it, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's still not going to be great. She'll probably still be sent to a prison. But I guess, you know, if she can somehow, you know, get away from the murder and stuff, that was all. I mean, she never killed anyone.
Yeah.
So
I think she will be, you know, basically tried as an accomplice.
Yeah. So it is interesting. I did think, like, maybe she would try to, like, get out of it, like, if she just, like, escaped with Milo, and then, like, oh, they go off with her dad and they go, but it's interesting she does go and face the music, so
takes responsibility for her actions.
Yeah. So that's all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
All right.
Looking forward to the War Games.
Yep. So we will be back. We will be back in like 2 weeks to do that. But for you guys, it will still be next week. We will be well rested and have working voices and not just sit back and look somewhat entertained.
We're off to the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
9,000 feet up.
Yeah.
For about a week.
But yeah, that is the last of the Recon episodes.
Whew.
These have been something. I know not everyone does the Recon episodes when they do their reactions. I've seen there are some people that instead of reacting to the Recon episodes, they'll just sort of read the synopsis and then just move on to the next episode. But sometimes you miss like 2, 3, maybe 4 serials in a row, and there will be like a companion change or something, and you kind of miss that, and it's like, I don't know. I almost feel like you kind of have to watch those recons, but they are so difficult to power through. So
that's why people need to watch us.
Yes, specifically. So we're the ones who are willing to do all the recons when no one else will. So
we'll slog through them.
Yeah, it is a slog, as you can tell by our slowly degrading speech. So,
with all that being said,
we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time for the beginning of the War Games. See you guys then. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's 2 different playlists, one for Doctor Who Classic and one for all of the modern Doctor Who reactions. There's a subscribe button, there's a Patreon button, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys next time.